which leads to the next part of this is Tomlin says he's not looking past 2024. Do you believe him? And do you believe that? I mean, you said at the beginning of this podcast, Justin Fields kind of feels like he's the future. Do you think that they're already thinking that far ahead? And is that like, what does Russ have to do this season to stop that and to make those reports about him extending true? And at the same time, like, how sold do you think the Steelers are currently on Justin Fields being a long-term option?
I walked away from today. I feel like they are pretty sold. I think they're more sold than not, I guess.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I'm struggling to put a percentage or something on it, but it really sounded like Justin Fields is at least an option. I mean, I think they're going to end up drafting a guy. They're going to bring in a rookie. So there will be at least someone pressing Justin Fields a little bit, but like, I think this is a guy that I think Wilson is a guy that they will have somewhat of a short leash on. It's not necessarily a guy that they think they can build around long term. I mean, I think there's an option. There's a way to get Fields for relatively cheap relative to what, other quarterbacks are making around the league, especially if you keep him kind of on the bench for this year, if things work out the way you plan and Wilson plays well enough, Fields gets to sit on the bench for a while. Fields doesn't have an opportunity to raise his value after they decline. We expect them to not pick up his fifth-year option. So if they don't do that, they bury him on the bench a little bit. They let him learn a little bit. And then he comes out and he doesn't have the kind of resume that some of these top-earning quarterbacks in the league have. You have a chance to extend him, say, hey, this is our plan for you. We're not really sold on Wilson. We can bring you in and keep you here. You can enter in pole position to be the starter, and we can roll with that. I think there's some value there. There's a path there. I just the way Mike Tomlin talked about it today, like I think the comment about not looking past this year, I think that has more to do with Wilson than it does with Fields, to be quite honest with you. Because I don't think Fields is definitely not an addition that you make if you're not looking past this year.
Yes, agreed. 100% agreed. And I also, I found it very interesting that when he was talking about Kenny Pickett, he said that at the same time that the Kenny Pickett trade happened, they were felt good about where they were with the Chicago trade, which meant they were already having talks. Those conversations were already happening, which means that they had a plan there for Justin Fields, even if it, followed Russell Wilson. And it did follow. Like, they had Russell Wilson under contract and they were still talking to Chicago, which means that they felt real good about where things were going. I feel like they already knew Justin Fields was the long-term answer in Pittsburgh. And I don't know, they have to prove that. That has to become a thing, obviously. But I think that that's who they believe could be. And I don't think that's going to, just like you said, I don't know. It's really tough to sit here and say because you don't know what Russell Wilson's going to do. And it's really tough to say that a 35-year-old quarterback is going to go into a season and look good enough where you're sitting around thinking this is worth throwing away the next guy for, which sometimes that's the case. If you think Russell Wilson's going to win you the next 2-3 Super Bowls, go win the next 2-3 Super Bowls. It's not about 5 years from now. It's about the next guy. But if you think Justin Fields could go win you the next, the 2 and 3, and Russell Wilson could win you 1, then you're going to stick with Justin Fields. I agree with you. I found it really interesting that they were talking about that they wouldn't acknowledge moving forward, but they obviously had a plan for Justin Fields. You're not bringing in Justin Fields for nothing. Even if it's a backup role right now, you're not looking at him and saying, this guy's just going to be here to back up Russell Wilson for a season. But we were working on him and on a deal before we got rid of Kenny Pickett. And before Kenny Pickett, before we knew Kenny Pickett wanted to leave and that Kenny Pickett was going to leave, we're still working on a deal. I think it shows that they didn't have as much faith in Kenny maybe as a lot of people thought that they did, or maybe that they were telling us that they did. And I think that it means that they have a plan for Russell Wilson. Even if Mike Tomlin's not looking past the season, Omar Khan is, Rooney is, there are people who see this.
That's the thing. They have to make a decision about the future very soon. They have to decide whether or not to pick up his fifth-year option or not, which probably won't, but that's a decision. That's a choice, if you have full faith in Justin Fields, you're not, that's the thing. It is impossible to not think about the future in this scenario. You signed Russ to a 1-year deal. they have decisions to make coming up soon. It is impossible to ignore those decisions, even at this point.
Yep, I agree. I think that there's a very strong chance that right now the Pittsburgh Steelers have a plan in place, and it might not be Mike. I mean, Mike Tomlin's involved. He is 100. He's as heavily involved as the rest of them, if not more involved than the rest of them. But it doesn't surprise me that he says that he's only focused on this year, because he probably is. But he probably knows, and everybody else probably knows, Justin Fields is a long-term answer, and maybe Russell Wilson changes that. But I think it's just as difficult for Russell Wilson to change the Steelers' future plans of Justin Fields as it is for Justin Fields to change the Steelers' current plans with Russell Wilson. I think those two are about the same. That's where we stand.
Yeah. And I don't think the Steelers lie to us Mike Tomlin lies to us when he says, I'm only thinking about this year.
Yeah.
But we've seen him pivot. We've seen this organization pivot pretty quickly, even just this offseason. So I'm not at all ruling out that, what his plan is right now or what he's thinking about right now is what he's going to be thinking about, in the next hour or tomorrow or next week or next month or next year. Things are going to,
that's a good point,
especially in this situation, things are going to change so quickly and so many dominoes are going to fall with the first snap of OTAs and training camp and then the first game. Like, there are a million different things that are going to change before they have to make final decisions about these things.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That is a really good point. What their plan is right now might change. Who knows? And that's why Mike Tomlin's not looking into 2025. But there's a soft plan, and they'll hope that it works out, because if it does, I'm sure that's where they're headed in the direction.